Romans. But after Octavia failed to bear him children, Nero tried to strangle her. This happened a few times, actually. Eventually, seeing that she was entirely unable to bear children, Nero divorced Octavia. This infuriated the Roman people, and they even protested the separation. The whole city was really up in arms over it. But Nero saw this as a chance to display power to his subjects. He wanted to show his people that he could do things with or without their consent, so he had Octavia killed. Around this time, the walls began closing in on Nero. The people of Rome had turned on him and his advisors. Well, they had hated him for a long time. So a group of Roman politicians made a plot to assassinate Nero. There's no central idea as to what to do after Nero was dead, but the Roman elite knew Nero was just not good for the empire and had to be eliminated. Before they were able to kill Nero, though, the emperor found out about the conspiracy. Nero immediately executed 20 people for involvement in the plan and exiled another.
This music is perfect alongside the sound effects. Like, you just hear the slashing and the blood splattering. Like, it's done amazingly well. And I don't know if these are like figures that this person drew themselves or these are actual ancient drawings and they just are using them in the context of the video. But that is very well done because it looks, genuine. I'm gonna be honest. It looks genuine. I don't know what to say.
Doesn't. Up to this point, Nero had been a pretty bad guy, but in the
Such a
years
dope.
that followed this conspiracy, the emperor truly went off the rails. Now, this is where the Nero you've heard about becomes real. Shortly after the executions, Rome experienced the Great Fire. It burned for a total of 6 days, destroying 2/3 of the city. The fable goes that Nero was playing a fiddle while the fire burned, but this is entirely untrue. For one, fiddles hadn't even been invented yet. Secondly, Nero wasn't in the city when the fire was burning.
No way, bro turned into Bubkiss and just went out and went to get some wine. This man's a demon. He doesn't care. If you've ever played the game Smite, Bubkiss looks exactly like this, but like a little older version. Has wine all the time. He's the god of wine, if I'm not mistaken, in mythology.
Instead, he was at a countryside estate. When he got word of the fire, Nero returned home immediately. There, he opened his doors to those affected. Anyone who was made homeless by the fire was allowed to stay in the royal palace. The myth of Nero playing music while Rome burned is probably just a metaphor that got taken too literally. See, on one hand, Nero loved the arts and joyfully engaged in theater and music, but he was not above causing massive death and destruction. After Rome burned, Nero began the construction of a new palace. His palace was much larger than the previous one, and right on top of it, Nero included a 120-foot statue of himself. To this day, no one knows how the fire started, but the people of Rome began to think that Nero caused the fire so he could have an excuse to build this new palace.
Man, it's just like an intricate story just connecting. Like, they're all doing it. People in the story are just doing things for their own selfish needs over the care of the majority of people, because these are the people in power, like the Emperor Nero or his mother or his brother and so on and so forth, and the other, consulate members and all that. It's just a crazy thing to think about. Like, back in the day, it's just death upon death. Just death
About
upon
these
death.
rumors, Nero decided to find a scapegoat for the fire. At the time, the Christians in Rome were basically a small-ish cult. Nero blamed them. He rounded up all of the Christians in the city and tortured them. Some were ripped apart by wild animals, others nailed to crosses and decapitated. At night, Nero burned Christians alive using the fire to illuminate his outdoor parties. Around this time, Nero began having marital problems.
The brutality of the ancient times is crazy. I still remember the bronze bull, man. That was a crazy thing that was taught in school, if I'm not mistaken. I remember it was like putting them in there, just burning it, and it just, in your mind, you just get this very horrible image. And yeah, this didn't help that he shows images of people getting burned alive at night, getting put on the cross. Like, I don't know.
With his new wife, Poppaea.
Crazy.
Eventually, he flew into a fit of rage when Poppaea was heavily pregnant. Nero kicked her to death, aiming his blows intentionally for Poppaea's stomach in a gruesome double murder. It's quite clear that Nero had lost whatever sanity he'd been holding on to. The emperor had his wife's body embalmed and preserved in a glass case so that he could visit her each night and talk to his dead wife.
Bro, this dude's insane. I mean, at this point, yeah, I don't even know why I haven't said he's insane. He's crazy. That's insane. You put her in you kill her, and then you make it to where she's basically immortal. Her body, physically, is immortal, and you go and talk to her. That is crazy. It's like his own freaking therapist. Like, I mean, do you, brother? I guess I don't know. That's some
Shortly
crazy stuff,
thereafter,
but
Nero saw a 13-year-old boy named Sporus walking through town. Nero claimed that Sporus bore a striking resemblance to the now dead Poppaea. The emperor had Sporus kidnapped and castrated. He forced Sporus to wear Poppaea's clothing, basically live as Nero's wife.
dude, this dude's a menace. This poor child just got, yeah.
Nero had Sporus appear in public as his wife, wearing the attire of a Roman empress. In a probably related decision, Nero began appearing in theatrical productions.
That is crazy. He made him, that child, Sporus, was made not only to dress up as his wife that he killed, but he actually played as his bride. Like the thought of doing this is just crazy to me.
Wearing a mask.
It feels so inhumane, no?
And playing the role of Poppaea. Nero's new palace and statue were bankrupting Rome, so he asked one of his advisors, Vindex, to raise taxes. That was the last straw for Vindex. He joined forces with the governor of Spain and the royal guard to assassinate Nero. Nero lived his life in paranoia and madness and probably knew this assassination was coming. One morning he woke up to an entirely empty palace. He ran screaming through the halls for help, asking the empty palace if he had not friend nor foe. The Mad Emperor.
That's a quote right there. Do I have not friend nor foe? After all that you've done, the fact that you would think that you have any friends other than the guards that you possibly have on your payroll is just, it's just like an astronomically stupid idea, in my opinion.
The Emperor just wanted someone. Realizing that
it's sad too, because he seems like he's mentally unstable, but you have too much power, man. You can't be with that much power and having a lot of friends while doing such atrocities throughout your years as the ruler. You know?
His death was near. Nero retreated with a small group of slaves to his estate in the countryside. Vindex sent soldiers to kill Nero. When Nero heard that soldiers were en route, he begged his slaves to kill him, but they refused. Nero stabbed.
Damn, he didn't take any guards with him because nobody wanted him. So he took slaves with him, and they didn't even want to kill him when they heard that they were gonna come. The Spanish were gonna come and kill him, the new emperor or whatever, because he basically banished himself so that he wouldn't be killed. Now he's fearing for his life.
Himself with a knife, committing suicide as he spoke his final words. What an artist dies in me.
Oh wow, because he was a man of the arts, you know. It's like, what an artist that dies in me. It's like he was an artist in almost every sense of the word. He could play like instruments, and so I'm assuming he was in skits, right? So on and so forth. He was an artist technically, but he became a demented artist, and this is your fate.
Nero was adored by the common people of Rome for a long time. He did a lot of great things for the Roman everyman, but these people didn't write history books. In the case of Nero, that shows. All of the information about Nero comes from 3 writers: Tacitus, Cassius Dio, and Suetonius. All 3 of these men were political elites who hated Nero and would be considered political opponents of his. They also wrote about Nero decades.
This is why they say the winners write history, because he is only being written about by his opponents, none of those that benefited from his good deeds throughout the years, the common people, and so on and so forth. Yeah, it's even though he is crazy, he did do good early on in his ruling. So
After he died. And when he died, he was the last of his family's dynasty. It was in these men's best interest to denigrate Nero's character as much as possible. The worse they made his dynasty look, the better the new regime seemed by contrast. Their depictions of Nero fall right in line with a Roman political strategy called vituperatio. This was the idea that you could say anything about a political opponent. There were no boundaries, nothing was off limits. You could literally just make things up, and that was an accepted part of political.
yeah, so defamation of character was allowed, which like nowadays you can't do. That will be something that you can go to court for and have a case. So it's crazy to see that like basically there was no boundaries in political discourse at the time, which is a pretty civilized society. At like back in the day, they're one of the more developed civilizations. So
Political
yeah,
discourse.
crazy.
In fact, many of the heinous acts attributed to Nero also seem to be lifted from Roman mythology or other works of fiction. For example, Nero's mother requested that she be stabbed in the stomach where, quote, the monster was nurtured. But this exact thing happened in a fictional play with fictional characters that was written just years prior. Many depictions of the Great Fire also seem to be entirely plagiarized from earlier accounts of attacks on other Roman cities. Nero was madly in love with his second wife. What's more, he was desperate for a child. Their first child had just recently died. It doesn't really make sense that he would kill his pregnant wife. And indeed, there's no
So there's no evidence either.
evidence that says he did. Other
Yeah, so like, so the thing he said before is, see, this is why you gotta go do your own research out there, because not everything you see online is the truth. You gotta go to some research, and even some of those resources might not be true. But obviously, you would go to more, you know, government or educational websites to get a more concrete answer for said things, like if he killed his wife and so on and so forth.
than
You had me thinking like he's just brutal, and then I mean he is crazy though.
the account of his
He is
political
crazy.
enemy, even that is suspect. The murder of a pregnant wife was also a common storytelling trope in Roman literature.
Hmm.
Today, Nero is seen as the embodiment of evil. Some scholars believe that the Antichrist was literally based on Nero himself. But more and more evidence seems to indicate that
Hmm.
Nero may have been kind of okay, not that bad, at the very least, pretty far from the Antichrist.
Hmm. Yeah, being the Antichrist is pretty crazy, because damn, that's a crazy statement. I mean, he was bad, but was he that bad? I mean, when you think about history, especially at the time, like all this is like common, like death is so common, especially in like the upper elites. So when you think about all the other stories, like even Julius Caesar is like the most prominent. Like he gets stabbed by all the people in the consulate, right? And he finishes it with getting stabbed by his own right hand man, Brutus. Even you, Brutus, he says his famous words. So it's pretty common.
The story of Nero is one of the all time great examples of controlling the narrative.
Mm.
The people who write history basically shape reality. You see, we'll never know how bad Nero was or wasn't, but it may not even matter at this point, because a couple thousand years later, what's written kind of counts more than what happened.
Damn, that's so true because we can't, especially for their time, there's no other type of evidence besides the writings. The rest is just speculations based off the writings and how true it could be for the time and so on and so forth. So the writing becomes the truth. It becomes the reality for the people that read it because the scholars agree. All the people that research and study this agree with this depiction of this person or this event in history. So yeah, it's yeah. Let me know down in the comments down below what you guys think. Was he the worst emperor in all of Roman history, or was there someone worse? Let me know down below, and yeah, don't forget to subscribe as well. Bye bye.